Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Last of Us Infected Analysis. Today we're going to be doing the bloater. Now, ideally this is going to be the last stage of the infected and the most rare stage according to it here. So this is our second to last infected and character analysis for The Last of Us, so we're going to be wrapping it up here the next episode. So then we're going to start a whole new game for character analysis. And I have plenty of games planned, but the next game that we're doing should be pretty interesting, so stay tuned. But yeah, let's dive right into it without further ado. Bloaters are the fourth rarest and most dangerous stage of the infected in The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. They take years to develop and reach the stage after years of exposure to the cordyceps brain infection. Let's talk about their characteristics here. Bloaters are incredibly strong and physically imposing infected that are covered in thick fungus that effectively act as armor plates. As such, their skin forms large patches of scale-like tissue that glow in the dark, which form their mycotoxin pouches, and engulfs their entire body. Because of this protective covering, they could withstand multiple hits from a weapon such as the shotgun and hunting rifle, and even hatchets and machetes, making them extremely tough to eliminate. Some bloaters are also impossible to kill outside a cutscene, like the one that Joel and Ellie face in the Wyoming hotel. Bloaters are extremely aggressive, but are rather slow-moving and uncoordinated, making them more predictable than other infected. Like clickers, bloaters see using echolocation and trap in a survivor. Because the fungus has completely deformed their face and blinded them like clickers, their echolocation is much less refined than the clickers. Their clicking is much deeper in tone than a clicker. If a bloater grabs a survivor, it will violently rip their jaw apart through brute strength, grab the player's head and smash it, pin them to the ground and pummel their body mercilessly, or grab the survivor's neck and bend it to break the spine, killing them instantly. They have some rough kills, I'll say. There is no way for the player to defend themselves if grabbed. The result is an instant kill. Bloaters throw sacks of mycotoxin, which explode on impact, spraying the target with the toxin. The mycotoxin will hurt the player over time, so it is recommended to avoid these deadly clouds. Bloaters, like all infected, are vulnerable to fire, making fire weapons ideal for when several bloaters set ablaze. A bloater will wildly thrash around trying to put out the flames after being immolated. They will be charred, black, and smoking. Their armor will also be charred and brittle, making them vulnerable to low-powered weapons. Despite this weakness, fire-based weapons such as flamethrowers or Molotov cocktails still require multiple uses before killing a bloater. Their other less effective weakness is armor-piercing rounds from an upgraded weapon, like the hunting rifle. It takes fewer shots to kill if the weapon has power and armor-piercing upgrades. Furthermore, despite their tough fungal armor, they are not immune to melee weapons as long as enough force is exerted on them. Joel was one of the few people to demonstrate this, as he was able to hack a bloater to death while also amputating its arm with 2 hits from a machete. Now, what I'm going to mention here, what's very interesting, my favorite way to kill him is bomb absolutely all the way. Just bomb them to high hell, pretty much. Throw a bunch of bombs at them and, just shoot them with shotguns. Shotguns are pretty effective on bloaters, at least in Last of Us Part 1. They're pretty effective. In The Last of Us Part 2, there's a lot more weapons you could use to help kill. But for the most part, it's more, The Last of Us Part 1, I like to use shotguns and bombs and pretty much stuff. So that's just the way I like to kill them. But yeah, let's talk about how they fight, the combat. The most efficient way to kill bloaters is to throw a Molotov cocktail or use the flamethrower on them due to their vulnerability to fire. When they are stunned, the shotgun is the most effective weapon to kill the bloater with. However, a burning and thrashing bloater can still grab the player and kill them, so under no circumstances should no one ever let a bloater get within melee range. To counter this, 2 shots from a fully upgraded El Diablo hunting pistol or hunting rifle are also enough to kill the bloater. Another efficient way to damage the bloaters is to throw a Molotov cocktail, then use a now bomb while they are on fire. Do not get too close, however, as it will always charge the player. The bloater actually draws its mycotoxin bombs from bright, deformed patches growing on its body. Each bloater has 3, 1 on its lower right abdomen, and 1 on its upper left chest, and 1 on its upper right back. Shooting any of these growths destroys them and reduces the damage required to kill the bloater. Destroying all 3 will completely disable the bloater's ranged attack, limiting it to charging at the player. This significantly increases the player's options for dealing with the bloater, as it can no longer harm the player from a distance and is easily lured into traps. If unable to destroy them, the bloater will take a short amount of time to throw the sack of fungus when they raise their arms. Run away from the direction the bloater is throwing the sack. When dealing with a runner, stalker, or clicker, if the player has access to a brick or empty bottle, as well as the blunt weapon, the player can still stun the infected by throwing the object at it and then continue by running towards the infected while swinging a melee weapon. This will result in an instant kill. However, this is ineffective against a bloater as its hardened face is impervious to throwing bricks and bottles, and standing still may invite it to lob a fungus bomb at the player or close in for the kill. Excuse me. So very interesting. The bloater is probably one of the scariest infected, besides the Rat King, which we'll talk about in the last episode of infected analysis, but probably the second to scariest infected in the game, honestly. So, and The Last of Us running in a little different directions, and then firing one shot is time consuming, but will work after many shots. If they run out of ammo for the shotgun, they can quickly switch to this hunting rifle. This is also viable for higher difficulties, as one is better off avoiding enemies altogether to conserve ammunition when they have run out of Molotov cocktails and nail bombs. In Part 2, the player can make use of dodge mechanic to avoid the bloater's charge attacks and lure them into ramming into solid walls, which will stun the bloater. Dodging does require skillful timing to pull off, though. Even though bloaters move slowly, their charging can catch players off guard, so it is advised to avoid becoming cornered when avoiding bloaters grapple. Spatial awareness is key to avoid being trapped, so these are some helpful tips here. While bloaters are a frequent encounter in both games, they are not a mandatory enemy to fight. For instance, in Pittsburgh, the University, the Salt Lake City, sewers, and the Seattle Hotel, the player can avoid fighting these enemies if they wish. However, the bloaters encountered in Wyoming, Lincoln, the Seattle Arcade, and at the Lakeside Resort must be fought and successfully defeated. And that's pretty much it here. The more, you do have to mandatory fight them, but there's also some optional things in Last of Us Part 1 and 2, as just, the locations there just mentioned. You could run away if you really don't want to fight them, which I found myself doing in all those levels that I've encountered, and maybe one time I fought them in one of those, but I haven't really fought them if I don't have to, because obviously who would want to fight that if you don't really have to. But the bloaters, brutal, and they're pretty rare, so I like that they did make it rare, so it's not, you won't see a bunch of bloaters like runners or clickers or stalkers or even that. You'll see bloaters on a very rare occasion, and that the best part is when you first play the game, Last of Us Part 1 and 2, especially in Last of Us Part 1, you first encounter it in the Lincoln High School gym in Billstown. You are not expecting a bloater. And Last of Us Part 2, you don't know when to expect the first bloater in the game. We know that they're going to have bloaters in Last of Us Part 2, but you don't know when to expect it. And I actually forget the first time you see a bloater in Last of Us Part 2. But in Last of Us Part 2, they definitely come off more brutal and very more strong, if that makes sense. But you don't know when to expect it, and that's my favorite part. But they're so rare that you'll see them and you put up a fight with them, but you don't know when to expect it because they're so rare. So that's what I like implemented into the game, and it's a very interesting kind of thing here. So the bloaters are an interesting infected. So, but that's pretty much it for the bloater. We got one more infected analysis, and that's it for the Last of Us character and infected analysis. At the end of the Last of Us final episode, I'm going to announce what the next game will be. So you guys stay tuned for the next Last of Us infected analysis. We're going to wrap it up, and I'm going to announce the next game there. So the next round for character analysis. So very excited with this series. Definitely looking to move on. Definitely excited for it. Hopefully you guys are too for the next game and the future games that we're going to be talking about. But that's pretty much it. So make sure to subscribe for more content, like the video, all the good stuff. Discord, Twitch, Instagram, links in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next video.